Hello everyone. So today in this video, I'll be explaining about the function integration into our front end, how to create asynchronous functions. Web3 doesn't allow synchronous functions as of now. I'll be explaining how to interact with the blockchain using our front end. We'll be creating functions to execute upon clicking a button. These functions which then trigger the smart contract functions present inside them. We should create asynchronous functions since synchronous functions won't work like I said. So currently Web3 1.0 provides only asynchronous operations only. So to get synchronous operations, you need to get back to previous version of Web3. So we'll be creating transactions on MetaMask upon participant registration. We will observe how does the interaction happen between the front end and back end. Let's dive back to the code. So as you can see, we created an initial layout for participant registration and it involves 5 text boxes. Well, after giving the input to the text boxes, we obviously need a button to register. And we created a button using this code, using the href, and on click, this is the important line which we always need to keep in mind. So upon clicking, we need to make sure that a particular function is invoked, and this function we will be creating shortly. So this is the name of the button, which is register. So in the same way, I've created 3 other buttons which are for picking the winner, getting the registered participants, and then transferring the prize amount. Now let's dive into script. So like I've explained before, this is to initialize the Web3, the MetaMask induced Web3, and this is the ABI, which we can get it from Remix IDE after compiling, which will be present in details option. Then this is the address where our contract is stored. Every time you deploy, you need to specify that address over here. Then after creating an instance of the contract, we can now create the functions for our buttons and then invoke the smart contract functions. So here in this example, I'm creating a registering function. So what exactly this registering function does? Well, it is used to invoke the registration function of smart contract. So let me go line by line and explain what this exactly does. So I'm creating 5 variables, and each variable I'm initializing with the value present in the text box. Well, document.getElementById, like I said in the previous video, gets the value of the text box using the ID. N3 console logs just to make sure whether the values are being stored in the variables. And now, if you remember the contract, the registration function is a payable function. So it involves some value. So every time when a function of smart contract involves some value, we need to use send transaction. And that send transaction involves the from address to address, the gas price, and most cases value too. The sole reason of creating transaction object is to create a transaction. Since our function involves value, we're creating a transaction over here. And to invoke our smart contract function, we'll be using the smart contract instance followed by the function name, then followed by the send transaction as it involves some value. And in the brackets, we give the parameters for our smart contract function. And since these are asynchronous functions, we need to use it in a fallback. So after the parameters, we will be using the transaction object, which is nothing but the one which we created above, followed by error and result. So if this function has been successfully invoked and created, we will console log the result. We can add one more line stating that what the error is actually. So now let's go ahead and dive into the front-end web page. I'll be using the localhost 8080. So remember, before creating your front end and actually using it, you need to open your HTTP server, and it can be done using http-server in your terminal. So as you can see, This invokes the HTTP server, and this should be always done when you're inside the folder of your contracts. And as you can see, the server is up and running. Now let's dive into our front end. So I'm using the Chrome browser with the MetaMask extension. And as you can see, like we mentioned in our code, as soon as we open our front end, it automatically takes the address from our MetaMask. And you can see here, this is the exact same address which is present in this text box. So I'm using the inspect element just to make sure whether everything is getting console logged. So now let's create a transaction, say registration. I'm giving a name, amount is always specified, email, followed by phone number. And now let's go ahead and register. Now as you can see, upon clicking the button, the MetaMask creates a transaction and it asks for verification. So once you confirm it, the transaction will be created, and as you can see, it has been console logged. And since we asked to console log the result, we will always get the hash of the transaction. You can copy paste this transaction into Etherscan and you will get the result. Now let's say after registering, I want to get the registered participants. Well, let's try clicking this button. And as you can see, it gives us the address followed by the value it has been used for registration. So this is how we can interact with our front end and how to create a decentralized application in a nutshell. Congratulations, you have created your first decentralized application in a simplistic way. In the next video, we will be learning about Hyperledger Fabric and its components.